What's going on, boyos? My name is Jake, and welcome back to 6-Inch Customs. Today we're going to go over how to paint your custom clone Commando figure. These are the paints I'm going to be using for my own 13th Legion design. But to do a basic Commando, all you really need is a black, a white, and a blue color. For my white, I like to use Vallejo's Game Color Dead White, Vallejo's Black, and then Citadel's Thousand Suns Blue. Additionally, I'll be using Vallejo's Black Gray, Neutral Gray, Gray Blue, Yellow Ochre, Citadel's Contrast Athematic Blue, and Citadel's Layer Lothern Blue. As far as brushes goes, here's a nice little set from Army Painter. Has the three you really need. It's labeled as for Dungeons and Dragons. Contains a base brush, a dry brush, and a detail brush. Typically I just use whatever's in the bargain bin at the store, but if you're looking for one little set to get, this would be the one to get. And we aren't going to be using the dry brush today, but it'll be helpful later in weathering. I just want to bring these up to show you that they're an option, especially if you're really new. But acrylic markers are available on the market, especially if you don't have a steady hand for painting straight lines and stuff. These are a pretty good choice. I really like Posca's markers. They have a limited assortment of colors, but they work pretty well. I like the 3M and 1M variants. Next up, we have our masking tape. For larger areas, I'll just use your standard painter's tape you can get from Home Depot or whatever. But for small details, I really like Tamiya's brand of stuff, especially their curved tape like this white one. I believe this one is about a 3 millimeter, but it also goes up to 12, and I believe even bigger. For our purposes, for our small details, we'll keep it around, say, 2 to 3 millimeter. You're also probably going to want a water cup and some kind of palette. Just using a standard tile, whatever you want to use is fine, but I like to use Army Painter's wet palette. Especially when you're trying to mix certain paint colors, this helps keep your paint moist for hours on end, if not days. Really helps to save paint in the long run. Just to cover our bases, a lot of craft stores carry these large tube acrylics. I mean, it is acrylic paint, it's the same stuff, but it's a hell of a lot thicker than what we get in our designated hobby paints, so in our smaller bottles. The price is about the same usually for one tube versus the other, and you do get a lot more. But as far as actual coverage goes, I've never had a good flat consistency with these large bodied acrylic paints. As far as price goes, it's really not that big of a difference when you really think about it, because one of our small bottles of paint is good for, I don't know, 5 to 10 figures. So that's what, a whopping 20-30 cents a figure for the amount of paint you use. It's not that bad, especially when you get the benefit of having nice flat paint. As far as painting tips go, we'll start with the basics. A lot of people forget this, but you should probably, or you should be, wetting your brush every time you use it. Dip it in a little water and wipe most of it off on a paper towel just so it's damp. This helps save the bristles and keeps the brush from spreading out. I'm going to start by covering up all the black areas. Mostly this is going to be the undersuit. And the great thing about Vallejo and Citadel, to a little bit of a lesser extent, is they don't really need anything mixed in with them like water or a paint thinner. They're usually good to go out of the pot, but just keep an eye on it as you use it to see if there's any paint streaks as you're going, and just add a tiny drop of water if you do see any streaks. And that's the undersuit finished up on one side, and I'm going to do the other real quick. So now the undersuit's done, I'm going to come back in with my black gray and do a little bit of the detailing around the shoulders and upper arms. Obviously you can just use a regular black if you wanted to. It's barely noticeable anyway. And now that all those black gray details are done, I'm going to go through with my white and try to cover up any areas I kind of messed up on, or you can see I kind of got some dirt on the chest plate as I've been manipulating it. I'm just going to go through. It may take a couple layers, especially because it's white on darker colors, but it's definitely doable. And as far as using your detail versus base brush, I use them. I keep switching them constantly depending on what the application is. Just if you're having trouble getting into certain areas, switch over to the detail. If you need to cover a larger area, use the base brush. And now that that's done, let's go ahead and take a look at the helmet. So here I have my reference from Battlefront 2. I'm going to start on the details of the front faceplate. And obviously try your best to stay within your lines, so to speak. But remember, it's not the biggest deal if you overspill with your black on any part of this, because we can always just go back over it with a few coats of white. So for the mouth, I'm just going to use my regular black, and I'm going to put it up just a little bit up into the T-visor, because the lower part is just straight up black. You can see I've already got some paint down in the back. I've been doing some trial and error, and at this point I've realized that I don't like what I've been doing. So I ended up mixing a little bit of my black gray with my Lothorn blue and just covering up the entire rest of the visor. Once that's down, I take some of my Lothorn blue again and water it down heavily to it's about the consistency of milk, I'd say. I'm going to just kind of stipple this along the top of the visor. And I'm adding a lot of water to try and get it to blend better with the colors that are already there. Then I'm going to take some of my Thousand Sun blue, again watering it down heavily, and just putting it kind of along the edge where the gray and the light blue meet, and then a little bit right in the, I guess you could say the nose of the visor. Then I'm going to go back again with my black gray, again heavily watered to try and blend it together. And the last step is going to be taking some achromatic contrast paint and just going over the whole thing with it, again in an effort to blend the colors together. Honestly, you could probably skip this step, but even if you're really trying to get detailed, I don't think it really added much. Now I'm going to go over all the areas I messed up on with my white. And then we're going to do a little bit of detailing, mostly with our black gray. Alright, and with that our basic Republic Commando is done. Now I'm going to start painting my custom design onto it. You'll see as I do this, I'm freehanding pretty much everything. I'm doing this as like a little challenge to myself to see how really difficult it can be. And I'm going to tell you from the beginning, it's pretty difficult. I should have just been using masking tape this entire time. And you'll see as I get later on, specifically with the blue, I'll start using masking tape and it looks a lot better and takes a hell of a lot less time. And that, to me, a curved tape is a real lifesaver. It works a lot better than your standard masking tape with such intricate 3D objects like this. And as you can see, I'm going to be using masking tape for these last few paint applications. It's worth it to just, kind of sit there, take your time, especially when you're trying to do something symmetrical like I am for these head stripes. Better to do it right now than to mess it up and have to redo it again right after. And certain details like the arrow on this guy's chin are just way too small to be able to use any masking tape for. So you can see I'm going to take way more than a minute here to just try and paint it symmetrically. And edges where two surfaces meet are the most likely spot where, when you're using masking tape, the paint is going to overspill. So just something to keep in mind. And there we have it, guys. There's my completed figure. That's all I got for today. Next video is going to be going over weathering and panel lining for this guy.